It's Saturday, September 21st, 2019. This may be one of the most important videos I have ever made. America right now is experiencing a banking crisis. There is a bank bailout taking place right now here in the United States of America, while most people are oblivious, unaware, as the media is not talking about this anywhere. We are witnessing a banking bailout taking place right now as America's banks are tapped out of liquidity. There is a liquidity crisis taking place right now, and the U.S. government is bailing out your banks. I'm always amazed with people who believe and trust the system, people who believe that the U.S. economy is doing well, people who believe that the U.S. economy is stable, people who believe that the banking industry is safe, people who trust that the government isn't going to let anything bad happen to the economy, people who believe that the central bank has their best interest at heart, people who just believe that that little plastic card, that little debit card is always going to work, that the ATM light is always going to be on, and it's always going to give them cash when they need it. People just believe nothing bad can ever happen to this system. I want to talk to you right now, the massive trouble that your bank is in right now, the massive trouble that the U.S. banking system is in right now as I make this video. We've all heard about it by now, overnight lending, the repo market. It's having very serious trouble. And while the media doesn't report it, while most average Americans are drinking beer today and watching football games, while their money, whatever money they have left, is sitting in an account at some bank, while we're watching a massive liquidity crisis taking place, I want to go over some facts with you right now why you better be awake and you better be very prepared, because we are witnessing very serious things transpiring in the banking system right now. We are witnessing a banking bailout taking place. All the banks have to have a certain amount of cash on hand every night to lend out to other banks. And what's happening is they don't have the cash to lend to other banks. It is a liquidity crisis. They are tapped out. They don't have the cash. Banks loan each other money every night for assets, then pay it back the next day. These banks are all going now to the Fed, to the discount window. And this is what exactly was happening before the 2008 financial crisis. This is what the banks were doing. They were going broke. They didn't have cash. They were going to the Fed for cash. So today, when you go to the bank to cash your paycheck or deposit a check or whatever you're doing, as you walk in, the lights are on, the teller's going to smile at you, it's going to be business as usual. But at night, your bank is panicking because they don't have the cash to cover everything. They are in panic mode. These banks are in big trouble right now, and they're going to the Fed for money. This is what, again, happened in 2008. This was the first sign of the coming crisis, and we are experiencing it right now yet again here in 2019. And it's so funny how people just believe none of this could ever happen, that you've been talking about this for 2 years, and here we are today in September on the 21st, and your bank is going through a bailout right now, yet your media doesn't want to talk about it. The financial analysts don't want to talk about it. Nobody on CNBC or Fox Business, nobody's talking about it. But your bank is being bailed out right now. And guess who's going to pay for that? You're paying for it. Overnight interest rates should be around 1.75. This week, the rate that banks were charging overnight rates to one another got up to 10%. Why was the rate so high? Because they didn't have the cash. All these banks are short on cash. And I wonder why that is. The Fed lent the banks $55 billion, I believe it was Monday, beginning of the week. And the bank said, that's not enough, we need more. So they had to up it to $65 billion. Then they upped it to $75 billion the next night. And they continue to need more. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the Fed continued to inject cash into the U.S. banks. Now, originally, it was only going to be a one-time event. So now it's Monday through Friday, and now it's going to continue on. But let's talk about the amount of money that the Fed had to inject over the last 5 days. We're now well over $350 billion of injected cash in the U.S. banking system that you're going to be on the hook for. If the banks need $75 billion to function every day, we have a massive financial banking crisis on our hands right now. This lending or this injection is going to go on until, I believe, October 11th, where billions of dollars will be continued to be injected every night in the U.S. banking system. J.P. Morgan Chase got $52 billion in cash. That's 22% of what the entire company is worth. And that was just in 3 days. And you think that the banking system is safe? You think the banking system is intact? You think your money in the banking system is safe? You are not completely all there if you believe your money is safe in a bank today. You are really having some issues if you believe that your money is safe in a bank. The world's largest investment banks needing $12.5 billion every day in newly printed cash from the Fed to provide cash on the books. And yet people say this isn't rigged, that the books aren't cooked, that these markets aren't manipulated, that these banks don't manipulate markets, that they don't cook their books, that there's no rigging of gold and silver and the precious metals, that they don't rig markets. Please, please. In 2007, the initial bid from Lehman Brothers was $620 million. 6 days later, a 120-year-old company with 11,200 employees, 8.9 million investors, worth $14 billion in market cap, was annihilated. 6 days later, gone. Boom. Disappeared. This week, they've already spent half the cash they spent on TARP back in 2008, and you don't even hear about it. You should be so PO'd right now. You should be, honestly, you should be pulling your money out of the bank. You should be putting it in a local bank. You should be putting it in a credit union, or you should be your own central bank and put it somewhere that you can get to. Be your own central bank. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not talking about a Lehman Brothers moment. We are talking about every U.S. bank being bailed out. And while this is happening, while America is being robbed yet again, the average American is sitting home today on this Saturday afternoon, drinking beer, watching football games, playing video games, talking about fantasy football, and doing God knows what while they're being robbed in broad daylight. Don't be one of these people. Don't be one of these comatose individuals who continues to be a victim of this assault. Make sure you are protecting yourself. You should not be in a big bank, be it a local bank, be it a credit union, or be your own bank. Ask yourself, is your money really safe in one of these big banks? Is that little debit card always going to work? Is that ATM always going to work? What if something goes wrong? What happens if the crisis cannot be stopped? What happens if that ATM doesn't work and that debit card doesn't work? Are you going to be able to function in everyday life if you don't have access, to cash from a bank who continues to rob you to this day, a bank that's having a liquidity crisis, a banking system that is filled with crooks and fraud. And we continue to trust this fraudulent banking system. We continue to trust these crooks, and we continue to trust them with our assets. We trust them with our cash while we're earning literally no interest on our money, and soon we'll be paying the banks to hold our money. Why is there a liquidity crisis going on, and why is no one talking about it right now? No one said anything before the 2008 crash. Nobody talked about the liquidity crisis before it happened, and then it happened, and then it was too late for too many people. So I'm going to wrap it up right here, but a couple quick notes before I go. As we continue to watch this bank bailout taking place. There's some other real serious things going on. Stocks plunged on Friday after the China trade negotiations went south. The Chinese actually got on a plane and went home. They canceled their future trip in Nebraska. And so that's not helping anything. So we continue to be far apart on our trade negotiations with China. New York Post on Friday, Fed's James Bullard says U.S. manufacturing appears in recession. So this is all taking place. Trade talks falling apart, manufacturing recession. This is all taking place while we are going through another bank bailout. St. Louis Fed Reserve President James Bullard, he said the U.S. manufacturing sector already appears in recession and overall growth is expected to be slow. And he is seeing issues in the bond market. So a continued bad news on top of this. Remember, protect yourselves. Deal with local banks. Deal with a credit union. Deal with yourself. Be your own central bank. Put your money in a safe place, a place that you can access it if you need to get to it for an emergency. Keep the bare minimum in your bank accounts to pay bills. I would not be putting too much money in any bank, but if you deal with a bank, deal with a local bank. We are all on the hook for this bailout money. Don't forget that. The debt continues to implode. The bubbles continue to get bigger. And now we are injecting hundreds of billions of dollars into these fraudulent banks, cooking books, lying to the taxpayer. These banks, many of these banks should have went under in 2008. And so many people defended them and said we couldn't let that happen. And here they are today, robbing, cheating, and stealing, manipulating markets, manipulating the gold and silver market. And here we are, the U.S. taxpayer bailing them out yet again. But the U.S. taxpayer, the average Joe Blow, completely asleep, watching football, drinking beer, and playing video games, doesn't even care. America, wake up, because we are in big, big trouble.